Go ahead and get started. We only have a guarantee of no rain until 11, and so I don't want to press it. So, my name is Jody Allen, and I teach in the history department at the college, and I'm also the director of the Lemon Project, The Journey of Reconciliation. I'm so happy and honored to see so many of you here today, students, faculty, staff, our neighbors, and members of the Board of Visitors and other dignitaries, to help us acknowledge, commemorate, and mark the site of the Bray School for enslaved and free Black children. Today we say to those children, you were here, you were important, and we remember you. It is now my pleasure to invite up Dr. Katherine A. Rowe, President of the College of William and Mary. Thanks.
Good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you, Dr. Allen, for that introduction. I want to echo your words of gratitude for Dr. Kern, Dr. Costro, Dr. Myers, the Lemon Project team, many archaeologists, and so many students who've been part of the last decade of research here. Your dedication to uncovering the history of the Bray School is what has brought us here today. So I want to take a few minutes to reflect on that work. Starting with particular thanks to Dr. Allen for the leadership that she has shown over the last decade. Since the William and Mary Board of Visitors established the Lemon Project 10 years ago, you've led the university in reckoning with our history, with humility and transparency and so much creativity. It's wonderful that our rector and many members of the Board of Visitors are here today, and incredibly meaningful to have this dedication as part of the Lemon Project's 9th annual symposium. On campus, the Lemon Project has proven that sustained reflection creates change. In this moment, we see the fruits of that work in the Bray School marker. I'm thinking of a wonderful passage from historian Annette Gordon-Reed's The Hemmings at Monticello. She writes, "In the end, right answers and true stories have a positive cascading effect because they illuminate. They enable one to notice and make sense of things that one might have ignored or thought incomprehensible without them, thus allowing for a clearer picture of the world one is surveying." This marker preserves and illuminates the history of the Bray School. The plaque invites all who pause at this site to join in the reflective work that the Lemon Project has begun and sustains. We should have, all of us, an incredible sense of pride in the substantive and long study that brought this to fruition, and we are still in process. Commemorations of this kind must be middle points, not end points. As we stand here today, William and Mary recommits ourselves to the process of work in progress, to bringing to light and to disseminating stories once untold. In just a moment, we're going to hear the beautiful lyrics in James Weldon Johnson's hymn. The lyrics go, "Facing the sun of our new day begun, let us march on." So let us march on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Rowe, for those wonderful words of encouragement and acknowledgement. I appreciate them. We all do. It is now my pleasure to invite up Dr. Terry Myers, Chancellor Professor of English Emeritus, and the person who kind of got this ball rolling a few years ago. So please come up, Terry. And
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's a great honor to be here today at this dedication. I thank you very much for inviting me and for being willing to listen to me. I'd like to use my 15 minutes of fame to talk a little bit about the Bray School and how it came into being, and then make some provocative claims about its significance to William and Mary and its influence. In discovering the site of the school and the school's affiliation with William and Mary, I incurred debts to a number of college and CW librarians and researchers, and to Louise Kale, immediate past president of the historic campus, who challenged me on a loose association I'd inserted between the college and the school. Indeed, that loose association led in some ways to the seed of the Lemon Project itself. I came to study the Bray School because as a student of 19th century English literature, I had noticed that the local 19th century had been erased. 100 years of history simply skipped over in Williamsburg. So I've long tended to keep an eye out for history that others might have ignored. And I happened to read a memoir by Ed Belvin, who grew up in Williamsburg even as the restoration of colonial Williamsburg was just starting. Belvin mentioned that an 18th century cottage, the Dudley Diggs House, had been moved from this site in 1930 onto campus. It took some time to find that building, now at 524 Prince George Street, because it had been so altered. But as I tracked down the history of the structure, a CW historian told me that there was a possibility that that house had been associated with a school for black children. I should make a parenthetical note here. It seems less likely now that that structure housed the school. Current thinking is that the structure likely dates from the late 18th century, decades after the Bray School was located at this site, probably as Mark Costro's archaeological work suggests, in a structure long since gone. Anyway, I became interested in the Bray School, especially when, in an almost electric moment, I read in college records that William and Mary had sent 2 children it enslaved, Adam and Fanny, to the school. That moment crystallized something for me, that I worked for an institution that had enslaved human beings. I'm always drawn to subjects that are overlooked, forgotten, or suppressed. Slavery and William and Mary certainly fell into those categories. Anyway, in a very real sense, we are here at this moment today because of 2 enslaved black children, Adam and Fanny. For their plight turned my attention to matters that became in part the seed of the Lemon Project and that helped me determine more precisely the association between the college and the school. The Bray School came into being because of people working in a culture of ecclesiastical concern for the souls of people they regarded as heathen in the American colonies. The person most immediately responsible for the founding of the Williamsburg Bray School was Benjamin Franklin, who had become in 1760 a member of a London charity, the Associates of Dr. Bray. Dr. Thomas Bray himself had died in 1730, after having been, among other things, the commissary of the Bishop of London for Maryland. Bray was a friend of James Blair, our president, and had visited Blair here at the college on his trip to Maryland in 1699. Even after his death, his proselytizing interest in the colonies endured through the Associates of Dr. Bray. And in 1760, the Associates turned to their new member, Benjamin Franklin, to ask where further Bray schools should be established. Franklin named Williamsburg as one of those places. The assumption had been that Franklin nominated Williamsburg because he knew and had visited a fellow postmaster here, William Hunter, in 1756. That 1756 visit is indeed central to the founding of the Bray School. But what's important is that Franklin received from William and Mary its first honorary degree, and that Franklin came in touch with an institution that already had a proselytizing mission in its royal charter, its Brafferton Indian School, and its faculty, who for some time, as clerics, had been involved in religious education, including blacks, both adults and children. Our second president, William Dawson, had, for example, reported to the Bishop of London a Lenten class he had held in 1744, perhaps in the Brafferton or the chapel, that included students at the college, white indentured servants, Indians, and blacks. And there's strong evidence of an institutional interest in the religious education of blacks. James Blair himself had come to Virginia as a missionary to Henrico, where the first moves towards establishing a college in Virginia took place before 1620. Blair introduced to legislators in 1699 a bill entitled A Proposition for Encouraging the Christian Education of Indians, Negroes, and mulatto children. And Blair, as commissary in Virginia for the Bishop of London, was assiduous in responding to the bishop's requests for accounts from clergy in Virginia as to their efforts and success in offering religious education and baptism to free and enslaved blacks. One of the bishop's own interests in religious education for Virginia's blacks may well have been stimulated by a powerful letter he received from an enslaved person or persons in the late summer of 1723. That latter asked not just for freedom from the cruel bondage of slavery itself, but for formal religious instruction, especially for children. So when Franklin came to Williamsburg, he found a college with a track record of religious education for blacks. William Dawson, our president, had in his own parish 3 schools for black children and had hoped to establish a school for blacks in Williamsburg, a goal that was mentioned in a recommendation of him to succeed Blair not only as president, but as commissary to the Bishop of London. Franklin clearly, therefore, knew something important when he recommended to the Associates that they establish a school in Williamsburg. and he recommended that they write the president of the college to make him one of 3 trustees overseeing the school. The associates did that, and it was a wise move, since not all the local slave owners were enthralled at the idea of a school in Williamsburg for blacks, even a school for the religious education of black children. It's clear that Franklin and the associates were seeking, and indeed achieved, an institutional affiliation with the college through its president that would protect the school from skeptics and opponents. The William and Mary president the associates wrote was the Reverend Thomas Dawson, our 4th president and brother to William Dawson. He was instrumental in setting up the school and enlisting as its teacher Mrs. Ann Wager, a skilled teacher who had been teaching the children of white elites at Carter's Grove, a plantation not far from Williamsburg. Although Thomas Dawson died within a year of the school's opening, later presidents were subsequently involved, though more vaguely, in helping to oversee the school. The Williamsburg Bray School was the most successful of the Bray schools, enduring from its opening in 1760 until it closed in 1774, when Mrs. Wager was in declining health and relations with England were deteriorating. The school was located at this site from its founding in 1760 until 1765, when it moved to another location. It moved because the structure here was deemed both too small and too dilapidated to serve the almost 30-day students who were instructed here by Mrs. Wager. Over its 14-year run, the school enrolled some 400 students, leading to a local black community unusually literate. Oral tradition says that the students at the school who knew how to read and write brought those skills back to the local free black community, skills that are supposed in the 19th century to have been used in forging passes for enslaved people from further south seeking to flee north. The students at the school ranged in age from the very young indeed up to perhaps the early teens, some likely placed there by masters more interested in daycare than in religious education. But an education they received nevertheless, though not one that might have shaken the foundations of slavery itself. If you've read Alexander Pope's essay on man, you will recall how hierarchical God's divine plan for humanity is. We are each born to a station in life that God intended for us, some born to be kings and princes, some born to be masters, some born to be enslaved. That is God's will, and our role is simply to accept our position, not to protest it, a perspective preached by clergy to the enslaved. The curriculum was straightforward, religious education first and foremost, which required the teaching of reading so as to allow the reading of the Bible, and religious texts, many sent from England by the associates. Mrs. Wager was supposed to take the students to daily services at Bruton Parish Church. Students also learned decorum and cleanliness, and the girls were taught domestic skills, sewing for example. And the archaeological digs that Mark oversaw turned up not only clay marbles and a small doll-like mannequin, but straight pins, suggesting that sewing was in fact being taught. And the digs over 3 summers also turned up a fragment of a slate and almost 50 fragments of slate pencils, more than have ever been turned up at any other site in Williamsburg, and a significant proportion of all the slate pencil fragments ever found in Williamsburg. The obvious conclusion is that writing was also taught at the Bray School. But writing could be used by the enslaved to forge passes, and several scholars argue that writing was not taught at the school, though the enslaved might well have learned it elsewhere. In all the extensive correspondence between the associates in London and those overseeing the Bray schools in the colonies, the teaching of writing never comes up in connection with black students. Associates frequently demanded accounts of the students and their progress, but never asked about writing, and writing in connection with black students is never reported back to them. Hence the weasel words, possibly writing, on the marker we dedicate today. In the long history of William and Mary's complicity with slavery and segregation, the Bray School is one of a few brighter, or at least less dim lights. I think it's possible to argue that with all the obvious caveats and qualifications, William and Mary is the first institution of higher learning in what is today America to concern itself with black education. Indeed, there might have been a second school for black children overseen by the college, for William and Mary was the intended recipient early in the 19th century of a bequest for a school to be governed by the college and to be located at the heart of the local free black community. But in the end, the college was deemed legally ineligible to receive such a benefaction. I wonder too whether the Bray School might have influenced Thomas Jefferson's interest in educating blacks. Most contemporary scholars assert forcefully that Jefferson had no interest at all in black education, though Carter G. Woodson wrote about Jefferson's proposals almost exactly a century ago. And Jefferson was indeed interested in educating what he called all the free children in Virginia, not all the white children, but all the free children, at least to a minimal level. It's worth recalling that Jefferson came to William and Mary in 1760, the same year the Bray School opened. Jefferson surely knew that black children were being educated not 1,000 feet from where he spent a good deal of his time, and that surely influenced his own ideas on black education. So in closing, I want to thank you for your attention and remind you at the Lemon Project Symposium tomorrow at 2 o'clock there will be a panel presentation on the Bray School itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. I really appreciate, one, just your all the research you've done and all the research you're still doing. We appreciate that, and we appreciate your continuing support of the Lemon Project. Terry, for a while, was one of the co-chairs, and we worked together for several years. And he decided to retire so he could have more time to do research. So we appreciate that. Yes, research and less grading, that is the ticket. Lift Every Voice and Sing, a poem written by James Weldon Johnson and set to music by his brother John Rosamond Johnson, is known to many as the Black National Anthem. It is befitting to sing it here today. Johnson captured the reality of the African American experience. The song expresses the pain and the hope of the enslaved and the early generations of free, and brings solace and determination and, yes, continued hope to us still in the 21st century. We are happy to have members of EMA Music, the EMA Music and Arts program, which works with young people between the ages of 5 and 18 to help them develop the skills to become exceptional musicians. The program's mission statement says it all: changing the world one community at a time through remarkable performing arts with love and action. It is my pleasure to present to you EMA Music and Arts to lead us and lift every voice and sing. The lyrics on the back of your program. Okay.
I don't know. Okay. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not
the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading the path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on thy way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever on thy path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee, shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land. Amen.
Ladies, excuse me. Hi, you all may be seated. I just, the only thing I had for the program was EMA Music and Art, so I want you all to tell us your names and please.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So my name is Sophia. I'm 19. I am a freshman in college right now.
You guys, my shoes are, the ground is taking me. Okay. My name is Jada. I'm a first-year kinesiology major at Hampton University. We're in EMA Live and EMA Music and Arts, where we teach production, music, audio engineering, performance, songwriting, piano, guitar, percussion, and coding, finance classes, lots going on. And we're honored to be here and sing a song for you all. We just put out an album a few weeks ago and it made #4 on the Gospel Billboard charts. And we're really excited about that. And yeah, we're just happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was awesome and so much better than I could have done. so much better. Thank you so much. This is Mr. Joshua Head, who is in charge of directing, I guess, the EMA Music and Art. So thank you so much for making this happen today. Okay, we're just about to go and pull off the cover from the sign, but before we do that, I want to thank you all again for being here. I want to thank again Dr. Susan Kern, Dr. Terry Meyer, Dr. Mark Castro here on the end, who spent those 3 summers on his knees. I don't know how archaeologists do it. But I also want to thank the Board of Visitors and our rector members for being here. It really means a lot to have you support these events in general, but in particular the Lemon Project event. So I really appreciate that. Thank you all for being here. This again was a very special day. It's a day that, as we continue to change the landscape of the College of William and Mary, to make it a more inclusive and a more accurate depiction of the college. So at this time, I want to invite Dr. Kern, Dr. Myers, Dr. Castro, President Rowe, to join us at the sign right up here, and we're going to uncover the marker. Thank you.
Susan, come up. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Pull this way. Ready?
Ready?